A thunderous roar filled the night as the aircraft shuddered, its landing gear scraping sparks against the shattered tarmac. Commander Reyes's voice crackled in her earpiece. "This runway doesn't exist. Wind's ripping us apart. Can you make it?" Aria Valor stared ahead, pulse hammering, muscles coiled. 12 lives depended on her. Below, billowing dust clouds swallowed any trace of pavement, just a barren stretch of desert sand. Still, she leaned forward, hands dancing over the throttle and flaps, every fiber of her being alive with purpose. Her breath caught. The moment had come. Drop if you've ever been underestimated. For years, she'd moved like a ghost through the corridors of the Blackthorn training compound. Late nights spent polishing her flight gloves, calibrating the prototype avionics, and patching fellow recruits' injuries as quietly as she'd treated her own doubts. The men around her boasted of flight hours and battlefield accolades. Never. Glancing twice at the slender figure who quietly outperformed them all. In the crowded hangar, she smiled politely as Major Linden barked orders. She'd heard the whispers, "Who is she? Dad's little girl." But no one saw the hours she spent learning tailspin recovery in secret, or the nights she paced beside her mother's medical bay, mastering triage protocols under flickering lights. Aria's hidden expertise had been her sanctuary, her shield, until today. Drop if you've ever felt alone in a crowd. Just weeks ago, she'd arrived at the disaster response hub in New Mesa, an austere compound built into a jagged canyon wall. She'd been assigned to inventory drones and supervise supply shipments, her credentials buried under layers of bureaucracy. When the emergency call came, a cargo plane, crippled en route from the quake zone, her chance crystallized. She'd watched the pilot scramble, faces pale. The emergency runway coordinates were a guess at best, a dried riverbed etched into satellite maps. Her mind raced. Dad would have drawn landing contours in the dirt by hand. Mom would have stabilized the injured in record time. And now, as the storm overhead howled, she alone possessed the legacy she'd inherited. Flipping the "come" switch, she spoke with calm precision. "Fuel at 60%, 50 seconds to touchdown. Recommend full flaps flare at 300 feet. Her voice masked the tremor in her chest. Behind her, the ground crew froze, listening. In those brief seconds, doubt collided with necessity. She had to trust her instincts. Aria closed her eyes. The compound's hum faded, replaced by memories of her father's workshop wood shavings on the floor, the scent of oil in the air, and the gentle firmness of his voice guiding her hands. It had felt safe, predictable. But life didn't wait for safety. It demanded courage. She reopened her eyes on the cockpit's flood of warning lights. Altitude dropping, angle precarious. Yet her hands were steady. She fed in corrections minor. Precise, confident. Drop if you believe in hidden strengths. Outside, sand devils danced across the makeshift runway. The cargo plane trembled as the wheels kissed the ground, no gear to cushion the impact, only her skill to bridge the gap. She held her breath, coaxed the engines into reverse thrust, and guided the craft to a screeching halt. Silence followed. Then radios erupted. Cheers, stunned exclamations, and Commander Reyes's voice, incredulous. "How did you?" Aria allowed herself a small, tired smile. 12 souls safe, 12 families spared. And at that moment, the world finally saw her. At the edge of the runway, she whispered to the wind, "Always listen to your father's lessons. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. Drop if you're proud to stand up when it matters most." A low dawn light filtered through the hangar's high windows as Aria Valor stepped out, helmet cradled in her arms. The applause still echoed in her ears, but the weight of what lay ahead pressed heavier than any flight suit. 12 survivors had disembarked safely, but the respite was fleeting. A Category 5 storm was converging on the quake zone, and no one else trusted that ragged runway. The desert wind moaned across the tarmac. Arya glanced at the flight manifest, scanned for the next assignment. 2 medevac helicopters grounded by mechanical failures, a convoy trapped beyond a washed-out bridge, and a ticking clock of dwindling daylight. Commander Reyes watched her approach, arms folded. His expression was unreadable, equal parts respect and reservation. "Valor," he said, voice low. "We need you up again. These choppers won't hold." She nodded, heart thudding. A chill settled in her chest, not from the morning air but from the question she hadn't voiced. Could she do it twice? The first landing had been miraculous. The next might break her. Drop if you've ever faced impossible odds twice. She returned to her locker, sliding open the metal door with a soft hiss. Inside lay her father's flight gloves, scuffed leather with faint oil stains, and her mother's old medic notebook, filled with precise diagrams and notes on pressure points. She spent a moment running her fingertips across the embossed name, El Valor. Family legacy was never a choice. It was inheritance. Arya retrieved the gloves, pulling them on as she mentally reviewed systems checks. The compound crew busied themselves outside, mechanics tightening bolts, radio operators calibrating frequencies, medics organizing stretchers. A symphony of efficiency born from chaos. Inside the cockpit of the C-130, she felt at home. The control panel lights glowed like constellations, each switch a promise of control in an uncontrolled world. She reached out, toggled the auxiliary fuel pump, then ran through the checklist. Engines roared to life, pilot seat vibrating beneath her butt. This time, she wasn't alone. At her side, Lieutenant Harper took a deep breath. A rookie pilot pressed into combat situations when more experienced aviators balked. His eyes betrayed nerves. His jaw clenched with determination. "Ready?" Arya asked, voice steady. Harper swallowed. "Yes, ma'am." They taxied onto the vehicle. Runway's an uneven crack in the earth, stitched together with steel panels. Beyond lay the canyon's mouth, wind funneling through with unpredictable gusts. The storm approached fast. The sky was a brooding bruise of purple and dark gray. Drop if you trust your team when stakes are high. The takeoff was rough. Crosswinds battered the wings, and for a moment, the plane lurched sideways. Arya's grip on the yoke tightened. Flaps adjusted. Engines throttled. Her training snapped into focus. Whispered calculations guided her. Adjust 15 degrees starboard. Increase thrust by 400 RPM. Maintain climb at 90 knots. Harper monitored gauges. Altitude holding. Climb rate 200. They cleared the canyon rim, turbulence easing into steady ascent. Below, the quake zone sprawled, a labyrinth of broken highways and collapsed buildings. Smoke plumes rose like grim sentinels. And the ocean of sand whipped across the landscape. "Flight path plotted," she said. "We'll intercept the helicopters at grid Delta 7, then loop back for the convoy." Harper nodded, voice stronger. She had given him confidence. Over the quake zone, the 2 helicopters appeared as specks against the dust. One hovered precariously, rotor blades slicing through brown haze. The other sat grounded on a half-collapsed helipad. Arya set the plane on intercept. "Brace for descent," she announced. Entering the hover zone, jets of air from the K-130's prop wash kicked up a cyclone of debris. The dust blinded them, rattled the fuselage, and set nerves on edge. Through the windscreen, Arya saw the helicopters fight to stay aloft. "Drop supplies," she ordered Harper, who released the cargo ramp. Crates tumbled out, medical kits, extra rotor blades, fuel drums, parachutes blooming like white petals against the dusky sky. But one crate snagged on the ramp's edge. It swung dangerously, threatening to tear away the panel. "Use manual release," Arya shouted. Harper's hand flew to the lever, yanked. The crate dropped, but the impact jolted the ramp loose, leaving the door ajar and creating a yaw that pulled the plane left. "Hold it," she cried, countering with rudder and thrust. The C-130 groaned as stress built. Metal creaked. For a heartbeat, time slowed, her mind racing through possibilities. Enough altitude and distance to recover, but not if they stalled. She rolled into an emergency climb, banking sharply. Dust clouds closed in, and for a split second, the horizon vanished. Then ground slipped away, throttle up, flaps retract. Wings leveled. They emerged above the storm of sand, engines roaring triumphantly. Harper exhaled. That was close. She allowed herself a tight smile. They delivered the supplies, but the convoy rescue awaited. The bridge was gone, washed out by floodwaters, and civilians stranded. Panic rising. As they plotted the next insertion. Alarms blinked on the overhead panel. Fuel leak in the starboard tank. Her heart sank. Another crisis worse than before. Drop a. If you've ever had one crisis lead to another. With the storm bearing down and fuel bleeding away, Arya faced a choice. Press on and risk ditching in enemy territory, or turn back and abandon them. Convoy. Lives hinged on her next move. She gripped the yoke, voice steady through the comms. Harper, prepare for auxiliary pump bypass. We're going in. Below, the canyon's mouth yawned, and the storm's eye rolled closer. Arya Valor steeled herself. The second landing would decide everything. Drop A if you live for moments that define you. She swore an oath under her breath. 12 saved. Now dozens more waited. And Arya Valor had never been one to back down. Cliffhanger. The storm battered. Ravine lay ahead, with no runway in sight, and a crippled plane that might not make it. A volley of tracer fire slashed through the floodlit perimeter as Arya Valor sprinted across the compound's muddy courtyard. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears, every echo a reminder that safety was an illusion. Drop a, if you've ever felt the ground shift beneath your feet. She dove behind an overturned supply crate, scanning the chaos. Med tents shredded by bullets, aid workers clutching makeshift weapons, and mercenary figures advancing with brutal precision. The second strike team had arrived, catching them off guard as rain battered the tarpaulins overhead. Only hours ago, Arya had landed with dozens of survivors and the wounded. Now the compound, their sanctuary, was under siege. She clenched. Her jaw, memories flickering of her mother teaching her to treat trauma under fire, and her father's steady voice reminding her to never let the mission slip. Those lessons weren't theory. They were lifelines. Drop us if you trust. Lessons learned in crisis. Inside the command tent, Lieutenant Harper and Communications Officer Reyes pored over satellite feeds. A battered UAV hovered above, its camera feed crackling as it tracked enemy movements. Arya slipped in, helmet dripping rain, and pointed at the screen. They've split into 2 squads, she said. One's heading for the med bay, the other for the armory. If they secure weapons and hostages, we're done. Inciting incident. The compound's armored gate shattered under a rocket blast, sending splinters of steel into the wet earth. Panic rippled through the defenders. Arya drew a deep breath. Reinforce the south wall with sandbags. Medics, get the injured to the control shelter. I'll take point. She grabbed a rifle from a fallen guard, an unfamiliar weight in her hands, and led a small team toward the armory. Bullets kicked up mud at their feet. The air tasted of gunpowder and fear. Drop a, if you've ever picked up a tool. You weren't trained for. As they reached the armory, Arya paused beneath a flickering light. The door lay twisted, hinges shredded. She pressed her ear to the metal, heard the mercs crowing inside. She signaled her team to circle around, using cover to close the gap. Then came the crisis and reveal. Through a gap in the door, she saw masked soldiers loading crates of munitions. But something was off. The crates were emblazoned not with corporate logos, but with the seal of the compound itself. A betrayal. Her blood ran cold. They have intel on us, she whispered. Someone here turned them. Resolution and reflection. Adrenaline surged as she kicked the door open, weapons blazing. Her team stormed in, flashbangs detonating, shouts echoing, securing the armory and capturing mercs in a whirlwind assault. As the dust settled, Arya surveyed the fallen. Mercs bound, weapons piled crater-high. She sank to one knee, breathing hard. The betrayal gnawed at her. The facility's security protocols were watertight unless someone on the inside sabotaged them. If you've ever felt betrayal cut deeper than any weapon. Clutching the seal-marked crate, she pried it open. Inside lay encrypted data. Drives 1 labeled lab access codes. Her mother's medic protocols, her father's flight simulations, and the compound's entire mission blueprint lay vulnerable. She rose, voice hoarse but firm. We neutralize hostiles and secure the traitor. Then we reset the locks. No one leaves until we know who compromised us. As rain turned the courtyard into a shallow swamp, reinforcements from the compound's reserve guards arrived, armed civilians sworn to defend the hub. Together, they began clearing the perimeter, pushing the mercs back into the storm's darkness. Even as safety returned inch by inch, her mind spun. Traitor. Insider. She pressed the data drive to her chest, a silent vow forming. Drop 'em if you believe strength comes from truth. Beyond the floodlights, lightning illuminated a lone figure. Slipping through the command tent's shattered window, an aide she'd trusted since training day 1. Arya's breath caught. There, she whispered. There's our answer. And as the storm roared around them, she stepped forward, rifle raised, ready to confront the betrayal face to face. Cliffhanger. The trusted aide reveals their true allegiance as Arya prepares to unmask the traitor. A crimson flare lit the canyon walls as muzzle flashes popped in the darkness. Arya Valor's heart thundered. The rescue had become a battlefield. If you've ever had safety turn into danger in an instant. Arya crouched beside the open ramp, her silhouette framed against the howling storm. Below, survivors froze fear, etching every face while shadowy figures in tactical gear advanced. Weapons trained on the trapped civilians. Harper slammed the door shut, sealing the ramp, and looked to her, eyes wide with urgency. Hostiles. He rasped. Embedded forces. Looks like an extraction gone wrong. Arya's mind raced. The storm had masked their approach. The enemy used the chaos. Zuri pods? Mercs? She couldn't tell. Didn't matter. 12 lives already saved, dozens more now at risk. She'd inherited more than piloting skills. Her mother's medic training and father's combat instincts surged to the forefront. We can't lift off, not until they back off, she said, voice low. We need a diversion. If you've ever had to think on your feet under fire. Inside the cabin, survivors huddled, some soldiers. Others aid workers, civilians with vacant eyes. Arya scanned them quickly, enough able-bodied to help if rallied correctly. She grabbed the intercom mic. Everyone with me, she commanded. Form teams of 3 to cover, 1 lead carry. Get those stretchers forward. Healing hands became weapons of resolve. Medics jerked into action, hoisting the injured onto sandbags and stretchers. Volunteer bodies formed human shields, raising makeshift barricades of crates and debris. The survivors fought back armed with desperation. Outside, the mercs advanced in 3 columns, guns raised. Rain mixed with blood and sand, a bitter slurry. At their boots, Arya sprinted forward, picking out the tallest supply crate. She climbed atop it, arms wide, a single beacon of defiance against a wall of black gear. Hey! She shouted into the storm. You picked the wrong target. Bullets pinged off metal containers around her, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she raised her voice to calm the terrified group behind her. The survivors lined up, ready to sprint for cover as soon as she gave the word. In the cockpit, Harper fired a signal flare out the ramp, bright orange arc against the storm. The mercs paused, momentarily diverted by the shot. Arya saw her chance. Now! she yelled. Teams surged. Forward. Cover fire erupted, flashbangs thrown. The survivors broke toward the ramp in a controlled chaos as Arya leapt down. Back in the plane, she sprinted to the controls, while Harper hauled the last stretcher aboard. The ramp thumped shut just as a volley of gunfire peppered the fuselage. "Brace!" Arya shouted. Engines roared, blades spinning to max RPM. The C-130 lurched, tires screeching on the gravel as the plane battled wind and weight. She guided the nose up, avoiding the canyon walls by inches. Sand and rain lashed the windows in a frenzy. She could hear Harper's breath beside her, ragged but resolute. "Climb angle 20 degrees, she called. "Hold it." The fuselage shuddered in and out of turbulence into clear sky. Thunder rumbled behind them. Below, the canyon floor receded. Hostiles shouting in fury. Droppa, if you've ever led people to safety under fire. They cleared the storm's eye momentarily, then dove into a wash of rain. The fuselage groaned under the assault, but Arya's hands were steady. She plotted a course through the narrow mountain pass, trusting her instincts. The compound's transceiver crackled. "All units, brace for heavy fire near the canyon rim." Hostiles retreating. Arya exhaled, tension draining like air from a tire. She allowed herself a small, fierce grin. The survivors cheered, though their faces were pale. Harper checked the gauges. "Fuel's critical. We barely made it." She nodded. "Set us for base. We'll land on the reinforced strip near the med bay." Rain pelted the windshield as the C-130 descended. Arya's breath synchronized with the engine's rumble, a heartbeat of control amidst chaos. Lightning split overhead, revealing the compound's outline. Floodlights bathed the runway in harsh white light. Med teams rushed out, prepared for the wounded. Flaps down, gear locked. Arya muttered, executing the landing checklist by rote. The plane thumped onto the runway, tires coughing up water. As they slowed, Arya unclipped her harness. Stepping out, she felt the weight of every life saved, every disaster averted. But as medics rushed in, her cum crackled. "Valor, we've got intel. A second strike team inbound, closing on the disaster hub. Hey, 10 minutes. Her stomach hitched. The compound was vulnerable, her sanctuary now a target. Droppa, if you've ever fought one battle, only to find another waiting. Arya lifted her gaze to the storm-dark sky. The horizon boiled with distant lights, hostile aircraft, or something darker. She adjusted her flight jacket, steeling herself. "Our fight's just begun," she whispered. "Let's go." End of part 4. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. Cliffhanger. A new strike team moves in on the compound, forcing Arya to defend her allies at home base. A single flare of lightning illuminated the compound's shattered command tent, revealing Arya Valor crouched behind a mangled console, pulse hammering. Bullets continued to ping the metal around her as she leveled her rifle at the aide who had betrayed them. Droppa, if you've ever been caught off guard by someone you trusted. The aide, Sergeant Calloway, stood in the flickering light, face pale, eyes hard. Rain sluiced down his uniform. In his shaking hand, he held a data drive identical to the one clutched in Arya's gloved fingers. "You don't have to do this." Arya's voice cut through the storm, measured yet fierce. "Walk away now." Calloway's jaw clenched. "You don't get it, Valor. We're done hiding. They need this hub offline. Droppa, if you've ever discovered a secret too big to ignore." His words hung heavy in the humid air. Arya recognized the name on the drive, Project Apex. Classified experiments in unmanned defense systems, programs her mentor had warned could become weapons of oppression. Calloway's betrayal was more than self-preservation. It was ideological, backstory thread. She remembered nights in the simulator bays where Calloway trained her on tactical retreats. His calm guidance saved her when she stalled a sortie. She had admired him, confided in him, never suspecting. His convictions ran deeper than loyalty. Inciting incident. Calloway pivoted, gun raised. "Drop your weapon, Arya." The staccato thunder of rain punctuated his command. Arya hesitated, only a heartbeat. Then she lowered the rifle slowly, eyes never leaving his dot. "Droppa, if you've ever faced a choice between duty and emotion, why?" she demanded. "This hub saved lives today. You jeopardize everything." He shook his head. "Lives you saved, that's the problem. The world doesn't deserve this power. Apex is too dangerous." Crisis and reveal. Thunder cracked overhead as Calloway tossed a smoke grenade. White haze filled the tent, obscuring shapes. Bullets chipped the floor around her boots. Through the blur, Arya felt the console shift, electrical sparks dancing where Calloway had rigged explosives. Her breath caught. It was a trap to destroy the hub, kill every survivor, and bury Project Apex underground. Resolution and reflection. Instincts sharpened. She dove for the fuse panel, flashlight beam cutting through the smoke. Her fingers flew over wires, identifying the detonator line by memory of the compound schematics. Sparks fanned out. "Calloway!" She roared, yanking the red wire. The explosives disarmed with a hiss. Metal groaned as the rig fell silent. Through the haze she heard his staggered breath. The smoke cleared, revealing Arya standing over the console, wires in hand, chest heaving. "Droppa, if you've ever disarmed danger with your own hands." Calloway sank to his knees, rain washing grime from his face. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Arya holstered her rifle, offering him a hand, part mercy, part command. "Then tell me everything." As he recounted the plot, Merc networks, ideological collapse, and a facility-wide blackout set to trigger. In minutes, Arya's mind whirred. She realized the storm was both literal and metaphorical. Outside, the tempest raged. Inside, she faced a moral hurricane. The compound's generators soon would fail, plunging them into darkness. Survivors were wounded, defenses compromised, and the next wave of mercenaries might breach their gates. "Droppa, if you've ever faced the calm before the storm." Arya slapped the back of her hand against the console, voice unyielding. "Harper, Reyes, rally the medics and engineers. We fortify the core silo. Harness every generator we have." A pause, then quieter, "And get Calloway to secure the secondary drive before it activates." She paused at the tent's entrance, silhouetted against the storm's fury, rifle ready. The compound's survivors watched, her eyes flickering. Hope and fear. "Stay close," she called. "We defend our home." Above, lightning split the sky. Below, allies moved to her side. "Droppa, if you stand strongest when united." As the blackout neared, Arya Valor marched down the flooded corridor, heart steeled for the battle to come. She had saved 12 lives with a landing. Now she would save an entire community with her courage. Cliffhanger. With the compound moments from darkness, Arya must lead a final stand to protect Project Apex and every life within the hub. A jagged wind tore at the fuselage as Arya Valor fought to keep the C-130 aligned with the ravine's narrow opening. The storm's howling gusts buffeted the wings, every lurch threatening to pitch them into the canyon walls below. "Droppa, if you've ever taken a leap with uncertainty." For an instant, time slowed. She felt the strain in her shoulders, the metallic taste of anticipation in her mouth. The makeshift runway, a sloping ledge carved by floodwaters, lay half hidden by swirling sand and churning rain. Below, the convoy's vehicles huddled in the widening darkness, their headlights weak against nature's fury. She recalled the day she'd first learned to navigate impossible terrain, clearing winding mountain passes in her father's old Cessna, dust trailing behind like a comet's tail. He had taught her to read the wind, feel its direction in the grip of the controls, hear its warnings in the engine's roar. Those lessons had seemed theoretical until now. Harper's voice crackled over the intercom. Altitude 200. Distance to touchdown point 300 yards. His tone was steadier than she felt. She nodded, adjusting throttle and flaps in one fluid motion. The fuselage shuddered as airspeed dropped. The engines rumbled like distant thunder. She angled, the nose down, lining up the descent. Drop a, if you trust skill over luck. The ravine walls closed in, slick rock faces gleaming under intermittent lightning flashes. Rain pelted the windshield, tiny shards of ice mingling with sand. With every passing second, the fuel gauge dipped lower. She'd patched the leak, but only marginally. Each drop of fuel was precious. A sudden lurch jerked the controls from her hands. Hold on, she shouted as the wing scraped against an outcropping. The impact rattled the plane, metal screeching in protest. Harper fought to stabilize. We're sliding. She slammed the yoke forward, nudging the plane off the rock and into open air. Heart pounding, she counted the seconds 5, 10, 15, until they regained control. The staggered descent resumed. Below them, the convoy survivors clustered around broken vehicles, faces tilted skyward. Children huddled against makeshift tarps. Medics waved frantically. This landing would be their salvation. Prepare for touchdown. Arya commanded. She guided the C-130 onto the ledge, wheels skimming gravel and mud. The plane shuddered violently as it touched down. Sparks flew where metal met rock. For a moment, it threatened to shear off the landing gear. Then rubber met earth. Tires bit into the surface, grinding to a halt mere feet from a precipice that dropped into black unknown. Silence fell, broken only by the hiss of hydraulic systems and the distant rumble of thunder. Drop us if you've ever landed on the edge of disaster. Arya exhaled. 12 lives saved twice. Now the convoy needed evacuation, and their small plateau barely accommodated one plane, let alone cargo loading. Unload quickly, she urged Harper. We don't have more than 2 minutes before that fuel leak drains us dry. Below, survivors scrambled to strap in. Medics wheeled out stretchers. Volunteers carried the injured across jagged rocks. Arya watched through the cockpit window, adrenaline coursing through her veins. This was the moment she lived for, even if each breath felt borrowed. A crack echoed through the canyon, a sound like snapping bone. The ground vibrated beneath their feet. Harper's head snapped toward her. What was that? Arya frowned, scanning the ravine's far side. Lightning illuminated a terrifying spectacle. A wall of floodwater, swollen by the storm's deluge, gushing over the canyon rim. How much time? She asked the radio operator. 30 seconds and rising, came the reply. Her mind raced. The ledge would be underwater within moments. If they didn't lift off by then, everyone on board would be swept away. Harper, prepare for takeoff, she ordered, voice sharp. He nodded, heart on his sleeve. She revved the engines, flaps at optimal angle, thrust at maximum sustainable. The C-130 strained forward, tires clawing at wet gravel. Water cascaded down, nibbling at the edge. As she lifted the nose, the ramp began to flood. Survivors on board screamed, scrambling toward safety. Arya's vision tunneled on the controls. Throttle, flaps, rudder, every input a lifeline. With a shuddering groan, the plane began to climb. Mud and debris sprayed beneath them. Water thundered past, foaming white against jagged cliffs. They cleared the ledge. Just out rain, and spray slammed the fuselage as the C-130 banked out of the ravine. Below, the makeshift runway vanished beneath a churning cascade. Silence returned, punctuated by heavy breathing. Harper let out a whoop. We did it. Arya allowed a brief, tired grin. Adjust course for home base, she said, and call for more runways. This one's gone. Above the storm-shrouded canyon, she sat back, mind racing. 2 landings had tested every ounce of her skill. But the crisis wasn't over. The fuel leak still threatened. and they were miles from safety. Drop a, if you've ever known triumph, was just the beginning. As the C-130's engines droned toward the compound, Arya Valor scanned the horizon. Lightning split the sky, revealing dark shapes rising on the wind. Shapes not made of storm clouds. Figures in tactical gear, moving along the canyon's edge. Armed. Her breath caught. Rescue had become ambush, cliffhanger. Stranded survivors now faced a new threat, an enemy waiting to strike. A jagged bolt of lightning split the sky over the compound, illuminating Arya Valor as she raced down the flooded corridor toward the core silo, water sloshing around her boots. Behind her, the generators sputtered, threatening to collapse at any second. Drop a, if you've ever felt time slipping through your fingers, the cold open hook had her heart pounding just as the power fluctuations had tested their defenses. Each step echoed, steel against steel, punctuated by the storms. Roar outside. Her rifle slung across her back. She gripped the data drive in her hand like a compass guiding her through darkness. Backstory thread. She remembered nights spent poring over generator manuals with Lieutenant Harper, deciphering wiring diagrams. By flashlight. It had felt mundane, then inventory duty, routine service. Yet those long evenings in the hushed hangar had forged her understanding of the compound's lifeblood. Electricity. Inciting incident. As she entered the core silo chamber, the emergency lighting flickered and died. Plunged into darkness, she paused, listening to the drip of water and distant thunder. The compound's survival hinged on those turbines reviving, but only if she could reach the control panel before the blackout. Drop a heave. Navigated by memory alone, she clicked on her helmet lamp and scanned the room. Machinery loomed like sleeping giants. Pipes hissed. Sparks danced along the edge of a maintenance hatch. Her breath fogged in the beam's glow. Crisis and reveal. She knelt at the console, hands moving over frozen switches and circuits. Every lever she tried sparked back. Then, through the murmur of failing power, she heard a voice, soft and mocking, echoing through the CUM system. "You think you can save them all, Valor?" The voice belonged to Merc Captain Reyes, her former ally turned adversary. His tone twisted with contempt. "Once the lights go out, this hub falls, and so do your people." Her jaw tightened. She realized the sabotage ran deeper than Calloway's explosives. Someone had injected a virus into the control firmware. The blackout was no accident. It was orchestrated to coincide with the storm and the traitor's unraveling. Drop A, if you've ever discovered betrayal in your own code. With the power dying around her, she had seconds to act. She ripped open the console's access panel, wires and neon-lit circuit boards exposed. Her gloved hands danced across the board, recalling her mother's med bay emergency overrides. Patterns, sequences her fingers flew. Alarms blared as the core turbines ground to a halt. Darkness pressed in like a physical weight. She located the infected module, its memory chip glowing faintly red. With one smooth motion, she yanked it free. Resolution and reflection, instinct and training fused. She slotted an emergency override drive 1 her father had stashed for blackouts into the socket. The console hummed, lights flickering back to life. A surge of raw power pulsed through the pipes, and the core roared. Generators whined, then stabilized light flooded the silo, illuminating dripping walls and Arya's determined silhouette. She exhaled, voice soft. "Never underestimate legacy." Drop a, if you've ever reignited hope from darkness, but relief was fleeting. As she rose, her helmet lamp caught movement behind a stack of crates. Captain Reyes stepping forward, weapon leveled, rain streaming off his helmet. Cliffhanger. Bravo. Valor, you fixed the lights, but can you survive what comes next? End of Part 7. A distant rumble rolled through the core silo as Captain Reyes advanced, rainwater dripping from his helmet onto the gleaming console. Arya Valor raised her rifle, finger poised on the trigger. Drop a, if you've ever faced an enemy you once Trusted. Outside, the storm's fury persisted, each flash of lightning casting jagged shadows across the metal walls. The compound's survivors held their breath, the hum of the generators a fragile epitaph for the lives at stake. Backstory. Thread. Arya recalled her first training exercise with Captain Reyes, how he taught her to read enemy patterns, to anticipate movements. She'd admired his expertise, learned discipline under his watch. That bond now lay severed by betrayal. Inciting incident. Reyes spoke, voice echoing. You did well to restore power, Valor, but this ends now. He raised his weapon. Drop a... If you've ever felt the weight of a broken alliance, Arya's mind raced. Below the platform, the compound's heart beat strong, but only if the core remained safe. She needed to neutralize Reyes without endangering the newly restored systems. Crisis and reveal. With a surge of movement, she sprung from behind the console, twisting as a hail of bullets chipped the control panel's edge. Sparks flew, warning. Lights strobing. She dove toward an access ladder leading to the catwalk above. The platform shuddered beneath her weight. Resolution and reflection. As she climbed, she recalled her mother's words. Never let fear shut you down, use it to sharpen your focus. Arms burning, she reached the catwalk just as Reyes lunged. Forward, blade drawn. They circled, weapons low, rain dripping from their helmets. Drop a... If you've ever found strength in your fears. Their blades clashed metal, ringing in the confined space. Each strike threatened to sever power conduits. Arya feinted left, then drove Reyes backward toward the railing. The surge of electricity hummed beneath their boots. With a final twist, she disarmed him, sending his blade clattering into the darkness. Below, Reyes stumbled, chest heaving. Arya stood over him, rifle trained. It's over, she said softly. But before she could lower her weapon, the console's alarm blared a critical pressure spike in the reactor loop. The entire silo threatened to overload. Drop a... If you've ever snapped between triumph and disaster. Arya glanced at Reyes, then at the alarm. The decision was instantaneous. Secure the traitor, or prevent a meltdown. Cliffhanger. She holstered her rifle and lunged for the control panel, leaving Reyes to seize the moment of weakness. A pale silver dawn broke over the compound's battered walls as Arya Valor regrouped with Lieutenant Harper and the remaining defenders. The storm had passed, but its ravages remained. Debris littered the courtyard, generators still hummed a low protest, and the survivors huddled beside makeshift barriers. 12 lives saved, scores rescued, but the fight was far from over. Drop a... If you've ever woken to rebuild after chaos. Arya scanned faces young and old, relief flickering in tired eyes, medics tended wounds, engineers patched damaged equipment. In the center, Captain Reyes was bound and under guard, his betrayal laid bare. Yet Arya's focus was on the data drives, 2 glowing modules that held the compound's future. They brought her into the command tent, where Chief Engineer Santos waited, goggles perched on his forehead and schematics spread across a battered table. Valor, he greeted, voice hoarse. This drive contains the prototype code for Project Apex's defense grid. If we can reconfigure it, we'll have shields enough to hold off any Merc attack. Drop of... If you believe knowledge is power. She studied the schematics, concentric energy field diagrams, feedback loops, power distribution nodes. The blueprint looked like her father's flight maps, intricate, precise machinery of salvation. Can we integrate it with the core? She asked. Santos nodded. With time. We need clean power, and these generators are at max load. Inciting incident. Suddenly, the transmitter crackled. The Merc leader's voice boomed. Valor, you play hero, but your defenses will crumble. Surrender now, and I'll spare the rest. Silence dropped. The compound's defenders exchanged glances, fear and determination in equal measure. Drop a... If you've ever been defied by an ultimatum. Arya stepped forward, voice unwavering. Tell him we'll defend every inch. Initiate at will. Harper keyed the transmitter. We're ready. Moments later, the Mercs responded with coordinated artillery strike. Shells thundered against the outer walls, sending shards of concrete flying. Crisis and reveal. One shell struck the east wing's ammunition cache, igniting a chain reaction. Explosions roared, and a wall of fire raced toward the command tent. Arya grabbed Reyes's arm, pulling him to safety behind a reinforced pillar. We move now, she shouted. They dashed through a haze of smoke and heat, Santos trailing with a portable power conduit. The path to the core silo lay through the inferno of the courtyard. Drop a if you've ever run toward danger to save others. Emerging amid flickering flames, Arya guided them through a service tunnel under the compound. Sparks rained from damaged conduits overhead. Every step brought them closer to the reactor's hum, resolution and reflection. At the core silo entrance, Santos set up the conduit. We need 5 minutes of uninterrupted power to upload the code. They formed a circle of defense. Reyes, shackled but determined, held the last ammunition clip. I'll cover you, he muttered, surprising Arya. Drop a if you've ever found redemption in unexpected places. With a nod, she initiated the upload. Lines of code streamed across the console. Firewall sequences, grid calibrations, energy. Harmonics. Outside, Merc forces battered the gates, rifle fire rattling the doors. Harper stood guard, sweat mixing with grime. Almost there, he called. A final surge of code. The console chimed. Apex's defense grid came online. Blue-green energy arc lights ignited along the compound's perimeter, pulsing in protective waves. Through the reinforced windows they watched as Merc projectiles detonated harmlessly against the energy field. Sparks dancing like fireflies before fading. Arya exhaled, shoulders relaxing for the first time in hours. The compound stood. Drop us if you've ever breathed relief after holding the line. The siege was broken. The survivors cheered, tears mingling with sweat. Arya looked at Reyes, whose eyes held regret. Your legacy will be more than war, she said softly. It'll be our future. He bowed his head. Thank you, he whispered. As dawn's first light illuminated the battered walls, Arya Valor reflected on the journey. 12 lives saved at the cost of countless challenges. Every lesson from her parents guiding her. The runway that didn't exist had become a symbol of possibility. The hub, a fortress of hope. Droppa, if you believe in new beginnings. But even victories bring questions. Who had funded the Merc attack? What secrets remained buried in Project Apex? And what new storm would test her resolve next? The compound's horizon stretched wide, a canvas of salvation and secrets waiting to be uncovered. A jagged sun broke through the storm clouds, casting a harsh glare on the compound's battered runways. Arya Valor stood at the edge of the control tower's balcony, helmet resting under her arm. Before her lay the silent expanse of desert and the fading tracks of yesterday's chaos. Drop up if you've ever watched the horizon for answers. The cold open hook found her gaze fixed on a lone drone drifting on the thermals beyond the hangar. It carried encrypted beacons calls from the Merc network that had besieged them twice in as many days. Each ping represented unanswered questions. Who financed the attack and why target the disaster response hub? Below, mechanics readied her. Father's custom VTOL craft, a sleek, silent reconnaissance platform retrofitted with stealth plating and advanced sensors. Arya had flown its maiden test flight years ago, long before anyone suspected her hidden talents. Now she would take it into hostile skies. Backstory thread. She recalled the late-night rebuilds in her father's hangar, replacing hydraulic lines by flashlight, recalibrating the avionics to run on minimal power. The VTOL had been his passion. Project, a secret second life parallel to her sniper and medic training. He'd said, "This will carry you where maps can't reach." Today, she would prove him right. Drop a if you've ever trusted a mentor's secret project. Arya climbed. into the cockpit, settling into the ergonomic seat. The canopy closed with a hiss. Indicators flickered. Stealth mode engaged, signal dampeners online, thermal camouflage ready. Harper's voice came over the internal comm. All systems nominal, GPS feeder active. She keyed the mic. Understood. Stand by for departure. Inciting incident. With a gentle hum, the VTOL lifted silently, ghosting above the compound. Below, defenders repositioned behind new energy shields, powered by Project Apex. Cheers rose as she broke through the early light, leaving the compounds. Safety grid behind. The desert stretched vast and silent, dunes shifting like living waves. Arya tracked the drone's transponder signal, each hop closer to its source. Coordinates blinked on her HUD. A cluster of abandoned oil rigs beyond a canyon rim. Drop a. If you've ever followed a trail into the unknown. As she neared the rigs, her sensors picked up heat signatures. 24 bodies moving in formation. Mercs. They had established an outpost in the decaying metal skeletons. Below, crates of weaponry and hacked defense modules lined the platforms. Crisis and reveal. Just as she began her descent for closer observation, the VTOL's console blared an alert. Stealth matrix compromised. A pulse grenade detonated nearby, and the air around her shimmered. Signal jammers activated. She had flown into a trap. The VTOL lurched, systems flickering. Ground fires below cast an orange glow on the rusted structures. Arya fought the controls, maintaining altitude against the magnetic interference. Drop a. If you've ever seen your safety net slip away. With a cry, she toggled manual override, rerouting power from non-essential systems to maintain flight. Synthetic gyros whined as the VTOL stabilized. She spotted a narrow canyon passage behind the rigs, a potential escape route. Resolution and reflection. She banked sharply, diving through the choke point. The rigs loomed above, and Merc rifle fire ricocheted off her craft. The VTOL's outer hull scorched where tracer rounds struck. Adrenaline flared. Memories of her mother's field drills returned. Imagined escapes through minefields, where every step demanded confidence in one's instincts. Arya trusted her own. She triggered the VTOL's secondary thrusters, rocketing forward through the dust-choked corridor. Drop us. If you've ever outrun danger with intuition. Emerging on the far side, the desert stillness swallowed the clang of gunfire. The VTOL soared above jagged spires of sandstone. The Merc outpost, now a distant hub of smoke and fire. Arya exhaled, pulse slowing. The data gleaned from her sensors had confirmed it. The beacon signal originated from a larger command ship floating in geosynchronous orbit. The Mercs operated under the eye of a corporate consortium, one with interests far beyond simple sabotage. She keyed her mic. Voice firm. Harper, relay coordinates. We've got bigger fish to fry. Below, the compound's energy shields flickered into view on her HUD. Their sanctuary waiting. But above, the sky held new threats. Drop a. If you're ready to fight beyond the horizon. Cliffhanger. As Arya set course for re-entry, an ominous shape detached from the command ship Shadow and Kofti. Unmarked satellite drone, engines igniting to pursue her VTOL. Thunder rolled across the desert as Arya Valor braced against the railing of the VTOL's boarding platform, rain whipping her hair like spectral fingers. Below, the compound lay dark, its new shields drained by the relentless assault. Arya's mind raced. She'd flown a reconnaissance mission, uncovered a corporate command ship, but now the true battle was at home. Drop a. If you've ever returned to a war zone you thought you'd left behind. Cold open hook. She heard the distant crack of enemy artillery, every explosion a promise of collapse. 12 lives hung in the balance once more. Backup had not arrived. The compound's defenses flickered. She clipped her comm mic. Harper status? Backstory thread. Harper's voice crackled through the static. recounting long nights they'd spent securing fuel lines in the compound's earliest days, laughing over ration bars when supplies ran low. Their bond had formed in hardship, strengthening each obstacle they overcame together. Inciting incident. Harper's reply came cut and urgent. Shields at 20%. Mercs amassing at the west perimeter, armored vehicles in position. Drop. A. If you've ever felt allies thin out when danger grows. Arya tightened the straps on her flight jacket, scanning the horizon. The VTOL's engines idled behind her. She could commandeer it, return to the skies, but that would abandon everyone on the ground. She knew what she had to do. Crisis and reveal, sprinting across the platform. She grabbed a crate of experimental pulse grenades, the very tech from Project Apex, designed to disable electronics. If she could set them at the perimeter pylons, she might stall the assault long enough for reinforcements, resolution and reflection. Arya sprinted down the flooded runway, grenades in hand, each step pounded like a war drum. Above, artillery fire peppered the air. She lobbed the first grenade under a shattered pylon. Electricity crackled as the pulse erupted. Disabling enemy comes. Soldiers below staggered, weapons sputtering. Hope flared in her chest. Drop. If you've ever turned the tide with a single move. She moved to the next pylon, but a merc officer spotted her silhouette. A hail of bullets chased her across the rain-slicked ground. Training took over. Dive, roll, detonate. The second pulse grenade fired, lights flickering out across the battlefield. The compound's shields pulsed back to life, stronger than before. Harper's voice rang out. They're pulling back. Arya stood tall, rain mingling with sweat. Twice in one day, she'd saved 12 lives, and now she'd saved them all. But haunting questions remained. Who in the compound had leaked the coordinates? And what would the corporate consortium do next? Drop. If you believe the fight is never truly over. Cliffhanger. As Arya scanned the darkened horizon, a solitary figure emerged from the storm, a familiar silhouette coming home. Rain-slicked floodlights cut through the pre-dawn haze as Arya Valor returned to the compound's central plaza, every step echoing against the battered concrete. Drop. If you've ever walked back into danger once you thought you were safe. She paused at the edge of the secondary energy shield, scanning the silhouettes of exhausted defenders. The Merc retreat had bought them hours, but scouts warned the corporate consortium's orbital assets would strike again at first light. Backstory thread. Months before, Arya had trained with the compound's new aerial defense team, mapping thermal corridors through storm clouds. Every simulation hinted at this moment, holding the hub against an enemy strike from above. Inciting incident. A distant pulse echoed above the whine of orbital drone engines breaching atmosphere. The new energy grid would hold against ground assaults, but nothing on the planet could stop an attack from above. If you've ever faced a threat you couldn't see. Arya sprinted toward the VTOL hangar, where mechanics scrambled to retrofit her father's craft with Apex-level countermeasures, EMP pods, and stealth dampeners. Lieutenant Harper met her at the hangar's mouth, eyes grim. "We've got 5 minutes before they breach the exosphere," he said. "Once they fire down, the shields will fry." Crisis and reveal. Stepping into the cold metal of the VTOL, Arya found Reyes waiting, unshackled and at her side. "I know how to disable their orbital comlink," he said softly. "But we'll have to draw fire." Arya nodded, heart racing. "Then let's make our move." She climbed into the pilot's seat as the hangar doors groaned open. The VTOL lifted into the gray sky, flares of early light reflecting off its stealth-coated frame. Below, defenders watched with bated breath. Drop. If you've ever taken the fight straight to the enemy. Above, the sky pulsed with incoming ordnance microsatellites armed with kinetic penetrators streaking toward the planet. Arya punched the throttle. The VTOL dove into a canyon gorge, Weaving between rock faces, the consortium's orbital command ship loomed overhead, its targeting lasers snapping onto the compound's coordinates. The first laser fire struck a distant drone battery, setting it ablaze, resolution and reflection, racing through the gorge. Aria and Reyes prepped the MP pod's delicate charges, designed to fry enemy electronics within a 300-meter radius. Each pod held the weight of their hopes and fears. With a shared glance, they launched the pods into the sky. The charges detonated in a silent ripple of energy above, severing the satellite's targeting link. In orbit, the command ship faltered, its weapon systems flickering into darkness deep below. The compound's shields shimmered as energy feedback from the EMP reinforced the ground grid, creating a temporary overcharge that repelled the incoming microsatellites, disintegrating them harmlessly. Drapa, if you've ever seen sacrifice become salvation. As the VTOL glided back toward the hangar, Aria allowed herself a moment's relief until she noticed Reyes slumped at her side, the after effects of the EMP surge already draining his strength. Cliffhanger. She reached for his arm as the craft touched down and the hangar doors sealed shut behind them, locking them inside with an enemy sentinel stepping through the threshold. A pale glow crept across the horizon as Aria Valor stood atop the compound's highest parapet, rain-soaked winds tugging at her flight jacket. Below her, survivors and defenders alike gathered in the courtyard, faces turned upward in silent anticipation. All that remained between them and annihilation was one final confrontation. Drapa, if you've ever stood on the edge of victory and defeat. Cold open hook. Across the sky, a squadron of unmarked gunships descended, their engines a thunderous roar that drowned out every other sound. 12 lives had been saved time and again, but this assault was different. These ships bore the corporate flag, and their mission was clear: obliterate the hub and bury Project Apex. Backstory thread. Aria recalled her mother's first field deployment after med school, leading riot control in a flood zone, her calm voice guiding panicked crowds to safety. She remembered her father's final mission, flying into volcanic ash to drop emergency supplies. Their legacy had taught her that compassion and courage could weather any storm. Drapa, if you believe in the power of legacy. Inciting incident. A salvo of missiles streaked from the lead gunship, trailing smoke as they arced toward the compound's energy shields. The newly fortified grid shimmered, absorbing the impact but only barely. Power reserves dipped dangerously low. Lieutenant Harper's voice crackled over Aria's cum. Shields at 10% and falling. They'll break through in seconds. Crisis. And reveal. Aria sprinted to the central generator control, juggling her helmet mic and a clutch of data drives. In her pocket lay Reyes's final confession, a decrypted log revealing the corporate consortium's true aim: to weaponize Project Apex's defense grid into a global surveillance network under private control. The revelation cut deeper than any blade. This was more than a siege. It was an ideological war for the future of freedom. If you've ever fought for something bigger than yourself, resolution and reflection. With shields waning, Aria called for a manual grid override. Engineers and medics poured into the control tent, hands moving in precise choreography. She slotted the decrypted drives into the console. Input the final sequence her father had encrypted for just this moment. The energy grid responded, pulsing with renewed strength. A brilliant arc of turquoise light swept across the compound, repelling the incoming gunships with a surge so powerful it sent shockwaves through the ground. As the last missile fizzled in midair, Aria raised her fist to the sky. 12 lives saved. Dozens rescued. A standalone hub had become a beacon of hope and a fortress of autonomy against corporate tyranny. Drop. If you believe in fighting for what's right. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now back to the story. The survivors cheered, relief and resolve mingling in their voices. Arya descended into the courtyard, greeted by gratitude and awe. She found Captain Reyes at the fringe of the crowd, no longer a traitor, but a witness to her unwavering conviction. He approached quietly, voice low. "You saved more than lives today. You saved our future." Arya nodded, gaze drifting to the battered runway beyond the compound walls. The scars of every landing and every battle marked her path. She raised her voice to the assembled defenders. "We built this sanctuary with blood, sweat, and heart. Project Apex belongs to everyone who believes in freedom. We'll share its power, not hoard it. Together, we'll ensure no one else wields it for tyranny." As the sun fully cleared the clouds, the compound's banners tattered but proud fluttered in the morning breeze. Arya felt the weight of her parents' legacy settle solidly on her shoulders, not as a burden, but as a promise. If you believe in new chapters born from sacrifice, missiles no longer darkened the sky. Instead, supply aircraft and civilian transports arrived, carrying aid and engineers ready to rebuild. The compound had become more than a fortress. It was a symbol of resistance. Arya walked to the edge of the runway, barehanded for the first time since the first landing. She closed her eyes, inhaling the crisp air, feeling the pulse of possibility beneath her feet. If you've ever felt hope take flight. She turned toward the crowd, voice ringing clear. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.